You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. So, Henry, as I do with all my guests that I've interviewed on the podcast, I'd like to take them back to when they first got into cricket. And it's been very fascinating listening to people's memories on how they started to get into cricket. So, Henry, let's go back to the very beginning growing up. I know that's a long time ago. Time flies. What were your earliest memories of watching, playing, and even going to the cricket? And who were some of your cricketing idols growing up?
Well, Jack, it all began for me at the age of about 8 years old. I think it was eight, it could be nine, but it was roughly 8, 9. I was in Zimbabwe at this stage. I'd emigrated from Zambia first to Kenya, and then in the early 80s, my family and I moved to Zimbabwe, which was a new nation. It used to be Rhodesia, had a war of independence. And so with our moving to Zimbabwe, that coincided with the opening up of schools to indigenous people. Prior to that, a lot of the government schools, and in many cases the private schools, were generally white only. You would have the odd flash in the pan sort of mixed race kid or black kid who went there, but generally they were exclusive. And so I went to a junior school called REPS, which stood for Rhodes Estate Preparatory School. And it was there that I was introduced to the sport by a man called Bob Blair. He was the Matabeleland coach, the state coach for our men's team. And he came out for a season or two to coach in the mid 80s, 84, 85, I think it was, something like that. And he was a former international cricketer himself. He played Test cricket for New Zealand. And I guess part of his role as coach for the state side was to come to schools and spread the game. And my school played cricket, and I was introduced to sport, I guess, in my first year. But I think it was really my second year, or maybe even third, that I really took a liking to the game. But it was really due to his visit to the school. And then later on in my schooling, so with that introduction, by the way, I discovered I could bowl fast. I was athletic back in the day. I could run fast, and that really helped with me falling in love with fast bowling. But ultimately, I think the thing that really spurred me on was when I went to watch a couple of international matches in junior school. So the first one was the Young West Indies. They came out maybe feels like something like 86, 87, and they came out to Bulawayo, and my school took us in, for those of us who played cricket, to go and watch players like Brian Lara and Jimmy Adams and Carl Hooper, who was very young at the time. They were just on the cusp of selection. I mean, I didn't know these were going to be future legends of the game, but they came out, and a few years later, maybe perhaps when I was in high school, New Zealand came out and played in some one-day fixtures as well. So back in the day, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have satellite TV, we didn't have broadcast streams, all of that. So you really had to see it live, or you'd read about it in a magazine, or you saw pictures, or books. But watching those players live, Carl Hooper, like I said, Lara, Jimmy Adams, when the Kiwis came, it was Mark Greatbatch and a guy called Simon Dool, who some people may know from commentary. Chris Harris, I think, may have come out as well. I was just inspired, and that was really the impetus for me to get involved in the sport. It was one of many sports I loved in school. I played rugby, I played soccer, tennis, and athletics was my greatest love, I think, up until the age of 16. But those very brief interactions with the game kind of made me think, well, I might be able to play the sport, because cricket up until that point was mainly a white sport, and it was hard to get into clubs. Therefore, it was hard to progress in the sport. But I happened to be at the front of the wave of people who go to school and then go on to play cricket. And that explains ultimately how I guess I was the first black player, because it took something like, 15 years after independence for me to make my test debut.
Yes, it did. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Henry, in terms of your formative years in the game, how you got into the game, how you fell in love with the game. As we will go on in our chat, a bit of a love-hate relationship at times throughout your international career with the game, but nonetheless, the passion and the fire was there from an early age. And as you said, discovering that you can bowl fast and you can run fast and bowl fast, and terrified batsmen at younger levels, and then go on and do.
I think I terrified them because I was fast, but I was described as a wild bowler who didn't know where the ball was going. So I think they're more terrified that they might get hit by the odd quick ball, and then there'd be a wide, and then suddenly a straight one, and they get a wicket. So I kept them on their toes for sure, mate.
You did. Well, if you don't know where it's going, they don't know where it's going. So
exactly.
Yes, absolutely. But thanks for sharing that with us, Henry. In terms of your start in the game and your journey, and it's always nice.
One more thing I'll add is, of course, the '92 World Cup, and I was 16-ish by this stage. We managed to watch that on TV in Zimbabwe. Somehow, I can't remember how. I don't know if it was live or whether it was recorded, but we watched Wazim and Inzamam Haq with all their heroics and exploits in the World Cup of '92, which was played here in Australia, and then winning that World Cup and Imran Khan captaining the side. And that to me was, I think, one of the aha moments where I went, yeah, I want that. And then just a couple of years later, prior to leaving school, I went on a trip with the Zimbabwe schools team, which I played for in my last year of school. And we went to South Africa, and we spent, crumbs, it feels like a week or two down there. We did we took part in what I think was called Nuffield Week. It was a week in which all the South African schools would get together and play against each other, and they'd presumably choose a South African schools team from there. But in any case, we were invited to go and take part in that competition, and it was hard cricket, man. That was next level, because in Zimbabwe was a really small pool of players. As you can imagine, it was a newish sport to the majority of people. But South Africa had a tradition of cricket that went all the way back to the 50s, the 60s. So, long story short, it was quite eye-opening at these massive stadiums. We went and watched a one-day international. I didn't even know how big grounds were or what kind of atmosphere they had. They were cooking barbecues while the teams were playing cricket. It was amazing, and that was, I guess, the thing that really pushed me over the line into thinking this is something I'd love to do. And within a few months, I made my test debut.
Yes, that's usually the case, isn't it, Henry? In terms of watching World Cups in any sport, young kids get inspired, and it's no different in cricket, as you mentioned just then, and that fired your passion to pursue cricket. Whereas in those days, cricket wasn't really as professional as it is now, in terms of money and all that stuff. And people thought, oh, what's the point? Is it really a career? But certainly a career now. And the players are making loads of money, which is good for the players and good for them, compared to your day and different generations from then on in. But once again, thank you, Henry.
No, it's a huge industry now. Yeah, it's a massive industry.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks, Henry, for sharing your journey into cricket and how you got into it. Very fascinating listening to that. Hi, everyone. Hope you enjoyed hearing Henry and I discuss Henry's cricketing journey.